Apologize to your sister or you're suspended without pay.
All right. But before sunrise, I resigned and released every record you tried to hide.
You did what?
The company lawyer ran into the conference room so fast that he nearly fell through the glass door. His face was pale. His tie was crooked. And when he saw the empty chair where I used to sit, he whispered, "Tell me she didn't release the records." But I had. And for the first time in my life, my father understood that losing his most loyal daughter was not the worst thing that had happened that morning. Hello. My name is Claire Bennett, and for 11 years, I helped build Bennett Medical Systems into one of the most trusted hospital technology companies in the Midwest. At least, that was what I believed. My father, Richard Bennett, founded the company in Columbus, Ohio when I was 12. He started with one rented office, 3 employees, and a promise that our software would help hospitals protect patients instead of treating them like numbers. I grew up hearing that promise at the dinner table. My younger sister, Vanessa, grew up hearing something else. She heard that Bennett was our family name, and she believed that meant everything inside the company would eventually belong to her. Vanessa was charming, beautiful, and very good at making people feel important. I was quieter. I liked solving problems. While Vanessa went to parties, I spent weekends studying data systems, hospital regulations, and cybersecurity. After college, I joined the company as a junior analyst. I did not receive a corner office. My father made me start at the bottom, which I respected. I worked late, earned certifications, and led our most difficult projects. By 36, I was director of product integrity. My team had created Sentinel, a security platform designed to detect dangerous medication errors before they reached a patient. Sentinel was my life for 3 years. I designed the original risk model on a yellow legal pad in my apartment. I recruited the engineers. I met with nurses at 2 in the morning to understand how mistakes happened during exhausting hospital shifts. I even delayed buying a house because I had invested so much of my savings into the early prototype. Then, 6 months before Sentinel's national launch, Vanessa returned to Ohio. She had spent years moving between marketing jobs in New York and Los Angeles. None lasted very long. Still, my father announced that she would become vice president of strategic development. She brings energy, he told the board. What he meant was that she was his favorite. At first, I tried to welcome her. I gave her project summaries and invited her to meetings. But Vanessa rarely asked technical questions. She asked who would be photographed at the launch, whose name would appear in the press release, and whether the platform could be called Vanessa's Vision. I thought she was joking. I stopped laughing when I walked into the boardroom one Monday morning and saw my work displayed behind her. My diagrams, my projections, my patient safety model, even the phrase I had written at the top of my first notebook, "Predict the mistake before it becomes a tragedy." Vanessa stood beside the screen in a cream-colored suit while 12 board members applauded. Sentinel began as an idea I brought home from California. She said, "I wanted Bennett Medical Systems to become more than a software vendor. I wanted us to become a guardian." For a moment, I could not move. Then she clicked to the final slide. By Vanessa. My father was sitting at the head of the table. He looked directly at me. He knew. After the meeting, I followed them into his office and closed the door. "You stole my work," I said. Vanessa gave a small sigh. "Claire, we are family. It belongs to the company, can own the product. It cannot rewrite who created it." My father rose from his chair. "Your sister is better in front of investors. We need one clear public leader. Then call her the spokesperson. Do not call her the creator." Vanessa folded her arms. "You always need everyone to know how smart you are." I looked at her. "And you always need everyone to forget who did the work." That sentence changed everything. Hardened. He told me to apologize. I refused. He gave me until noon. At 11:58, an email reached every department. I had been suspended without pay for 30 days because of hostile conduct towards senior leadership. My building access would remain active only until 5 that evening, so I could collect personal belongings under supervision. The email ended with one sentence: "Ryan's statement will depend upon a sincere written apology to Vanessa Bennett. People came to my office one by one. Some were angry for me. Others avoided my eyes. My project manager, Miguel Santos, closed the door behind him. "This is bigger than credit," he said quietly. Then he placed a printed spreadsheet on my desk. The page showed 12 hospitals that had agreed to test Sentinel. Beside 4 of them were red labels validitium nu AIVD. "What is this?" I asked. "Vanessa ordered us to classify unfinished test results as complete. She said the launch date could not move." My stomach tightened. Sentinel has not passed the pediatric dose simulations. I know. A failure in those simulations could cause the system to miss a dosage error involving a child. It was rare, but rare was not the same as impossible. "Did you follow her order?" I asked. Miguel shook his head. "Not yet. But somebody changed the dashboard last night. It now says every test passed." I opened the internal audit log. My credentials had been used at 1:17 that morning to approve the missing tests. I had been asleep at home. Someone had stolen more than my work. Someone was preparing to make me responsible if Sentinel failed. I saved the audit log inside the company's protected compliance system exactly as our reporting policy required. Then I called our chief legal officer, Martin Cole. His assistant said he was unavailable. 10 minutes later, my father entered my office with a security guard. "Right," I said before he could speak. His shoulders relaxed. He thought I had surrendered. "You will apologize." I looked at the framed photograph on my desk. It showed my father and me at Sentinel's first successful hospital test. Back then, his arm had been around my shoulder, and he had called me the future of the company. "All right," I repeated. But I never said what I was agreeing to. At 5, I left with one cardboard box. I drove home, made coffee, and began reading every document I was legally entitled to review as the registered director responsible for product integrity. I did not hack the company. I did not steal trade secrets. I opened records already assigned to me and followed our written compliance procedure. What I found kept me awake all night. Vanessa had promised investors that Sentinel was ready 3 months earlier than our engineering estimate. If the company missed her launch date, a financing agreement would collapse. My father had personally guaranteed part of that agreement. That explained why he had chosen her lie over my reputation. He was not only protecting his favorite daughter, he was protecting himself. At 20:40 in the morning, I discovered something worse. A hospital in Indiana had reported 2 serious test alerts that Sentinel failed to catch. The report had been removed from the main project folder. A copy survived only because an automated archive had preserved it. The hospital's safety officer had written, "Deployment should stop until the pediatric calculation defect is corrected." Below that message was my father's reply, "Do not circulate this outside the executive group. Claire will resolve it after launch." He had known. At 3:15, I called Martin again. This time he answered, "Claire, it is the middle of the night. Did you know my electronic signature was used to approve incomplete safety tests?" There was a long silence. "We should discuss this after emotions settle." That is not an answer. Your father wants to keep the family together. A forged approval does not keep a family together. It creates a scapegoat. His voice became colder. "Be careful what you accuse people of." That was the moment I understood Martin was not going to protect the company from wrongdoing. He was going to protect my father from consequences. Fortunately, the company policy Martin had written years earlier gave me another option. If senior management interfered with a patient safety investigation, the director of product integrity had a legal and professional duty to notify the affected testing partners and the independent regulatory monitor. Not permission, a duty. I prepared a factual report. I included the failed tests, the altered dashboard, the use of my credentials, the hidden hospital warning, and the messages ordering employees to ignore validation requirements. I did not include gossip. I did not include insults. I did not make claims I could not prove. Then I scheduled the report to be released at 8:00 a.m. At 4:30 I returned to headquarters. My access card still worked because the suspension officially began at 9. The building was silent. Streetlights reflected across the lobby floor. I walked to my office for the last time and removed everything that belonged to me: 2 books, a coffee mug, my mother's photograph and the small glass award my team had given me after our first prototype succeeded. I left the company laptop, every project document, and every company-owned device on the desk. Then I wrote my resignation. It was only 4 paragraphs. I resigned immediately because executive leadership had compromised patient safety, falsified testing records, and attempted to place responsibility under my name. I stated that I would cooperate with any lawful investigation. I also stated that retaliation against employees who reported safety concerns would be documented. At 5:12 a.m., I posted it to the internal employee board and sent it to the directors. By 6, my phone was filled with messages. My father called 11 times. Vanessa sent only one text. "You have always been jealous of me. You just destroyed your own future." I replied, "No, Vanessa, I stopped you from using my future as your alibi." At 7:30, the board gathered for an emergency meeting. I was not invited, but Miguel later told me what happened. My father began by calling my resignation an emotional outburst. Vanessa claimed I had invented the safety problems after being disciplined. Several directors believed them, until Martin entered the room and asked whether I still had access to the compliance portal. My father said, "Of course she does." Martin checked his watch. It was 7:57. He ran from the room. At exactly 8, my report was delivered to all 12 hospital partners, the independent monitor, the company's insurer, and the board's audit committee. The records were not released to the public. They went only to people authorized to receive them. Martin rushed back into the conference room, looking as if he had seen a ghost. "Tell me she didn't release the records," he said. Nobody answered. Then every phone on the table began to ring. The first hospital suspended its trial, then a second. By 9:30, all 12 had paused deployment. The insurer froze coverage for the launch. The independent monitor opened a formal inquiry. Vanessa began shouting that I had sabotaged the company. Martin told her to stop talking. My father called me again at 10:06. This time, I answered. "Come back," he said. His voice was low and controlled. "We can fix this privately. You had a chance to fix it privately when I showed you she stole my work. This is not about your presentation anymore." It was never only about the presentation. He offered to end my suspension. Then he offered me a promotion. Finally, he offered to announce that I had created Sentinel. It would have been everything I had wanted the day before. Now it sounded worthless. "Did you authorize someone to use my credentials?" I asked. Silence. "Answer me." "I authorized whatever was necessary to protect the company." There it was. Not an apology, a confession wrapped in pride. "Then there is nothing to discuss," I said. I ended the call. For the next 2 weeks, the company descended into chaos. Investigators interviewed engineers, managers, and hospital staff. Miguel provided his emails. 2 other employees admitted that Vanessa had pressured them to change test dates. Then the most unexpected witness came forward. Her name was Diane Mercer, my father's executive assistant of 18 years. Diane had watched us grow up. She had remembered birthdays, organized family dinners, and covered for my father every time he chose work over us. She gave investigators an audio recording from an executive meeting. On it, Vanessa said, "Use Claire's approval. Everyone trusts her name." My father answered, "She will be angry, but she will never hurt this family." He had built his entire plan on that belief. He believed my love made me weak. He did not understand that love without respect eventually becomes a cage, and I had finally opened the door. The board placed my father and Vanessa on administrative leave. Martin resigned after investigators discovered he had delayed reporting the hospital warning. But the story was still not over. One Friday afternoon, my father came to my apartment. I almost did not let him in. He looked older than he had 2 weeks earlier. His suit hung loosely on him, and there were gray shadows beneath his eyes. "The board wants me to step down," he said. I waited. "Vanessa may face criminal charges for the false electronic approval." I waited again. Finally, he asked, "Are you happy now?" The question hurt more than I expected. "No," I said. I wanted a father who would ask whether I was all right. I wanted a sister who did not see my work as something she could take. I wanted the company we claimed to be. "You could have warned me before releasing the report," I warned you in your office. He looked toward the window. I was trying to save what I built. You were trying to save your control over it. For the first time, he had no argument. Before he left, he placed my old employee badge on the table. I had forgotten it in my desk. The board may ask you to come back, he said. I know, will you? Not while Bennett is run like a family kingdom. 3 months later, the investigation ended. The company paid penalties, but no patient had been harmed because deployment had stopped in time. The board removed my father as chief executive and dismissed Vanessa. She accepted a legal agreement that included probation, restitution, and a permanent ban from holding a compliance role in the medical technology industry. My father kept a minority ownership stake, but he lost voting control. The board did ask me to return. I agreed on 3 conditions. First, an independent safety committee would have final authority over every product launch. Second, employees could report executive misconduct without going through family-controlled management. Third, Sentinel would credit the entire development team by name. Not just me. The board accepted all 3. I returned as Chief Ethics and Product Officer, but I did not move into my father's old office. I turned it into a safety review room with glass walls and a long table where engineers, nurses, and compliance staff could challenge any decision, mine included. 6 months later, Sentinel passed every test and launched in 4 hospitals. During its first year, it caught hundreds of medication discrepancies, including 7 pediatric dosage errors that could have caused serious harm. At the launch ceremony, a reporter asked me whether exposing my own family had been an act of revenge. I thought about my empty office before sunrise. I thought about Vanessa standing beside my stolen presentation. I thought about my father saying, I would never hurt the family. Then I looked at Miguel, Diane, and the engineers whose names now appeared on the stage behind me. Revenge destroys the truth to hurt someone, I said. Justice reveals the truth so they cannot keep hurting others. My father never returned to the company. For almost a year, we did not speak. Then one evening, he mailed me a handwritten letter. It did not ask for his job back. It did not blame Vanessa. It did not ask me to protect the family name. It said only, I taught you that our name should stand for trust. You were the only one brave enough to make that true. I still have that letter. Forgiveness did not come immediately. Trust did not magically return. Some wounds need time, and some relationships never become what they were before. But I learned something more valuable than how to win a fight. I learned that silence is not loyalty. Obedience is not love. And when people demand that you apologize for telling the truth, sometimes the most powerful answer is not an argument. Sometimes you simply say, all right. Clear your office before sunrise, and leave them alone with the records they thought you would never release. Because they may steal your work, they may steal your title, they may even try to steal your name. But the moment you stop carrying their lies, the truth becomes the one thing they can never take from you.